My psycho ex kicked down my door and lied to everyone. So I destroyed her academic career. I was just a few months into my freshman year at a large state university when I met Megan. I'd been lucky enough to get accepted into this elite honors-style program that grouped all of us into a single dorm building, guys and girls mixed together. It was meant to foster community, collaboration, academic success, all that good stuff. And honestly, it worked. At first, Megan lived directly above me. We met in one of the building's shared lounges, and at the time, she seemed smart, energetic, and super outgoing. She made it really easy to talk to her, probably a little too easy. As a dumb, excited freshman, I rushed into things way too quickly and started dating her within weeks of school starting. Everyone else in the building had a different opinion about her, though. While I was walking on air, completely blind to all the red flags, my floor mates would roll their eyes whenever Megan's name came up. It didn't take long for me to find out why. Megan loved talking, but only about herself. All day, every day, she'd dominate conversations with stories about her life, her opinions, her accomplishments. It was all me, me, me. And one thing she especially loved to brag about, she'd constantly tell people she was a fairly aggressive person, like it was some kind of badge of honor. At first, I brushed it off. I thought maybe she was just confident. Maybe people were being too harsh. I mean, everyone's a little loud and full of themselves when they're fresh out of high school, right? That's what I told myself. Looking back, that was me ignoring a mile-wide red flag. We dated for about 3 months, and for a while, things were relatively calm. We both had unlimited dining plans, thanks to our parents footing the bill. And neither of us had many responsibilities outside of classes. I had no credit card at the time, so I kept all my money in one checking account linked to a debit card. I rarely used it during the semester since meals were covered and I didn't really shop. So when I got a call from my mom one evening right after Thanksgiving break, it caught me off guard. She said, "Hey, I saw some weird charges on your account. Have you been ordering food off campus?" I hadn't. She told me 6 different food orders had come out of my account over the past 2 weeks, totaling about 104.29. All of them were from Grubhub. Immediately, I went into problem-solving mode. First, I was confused. Then I got a little paranoid. And then I made a call. I wish I didn't have to I asked Megan if she knew anything about it. She denied it, of course. Her suggestion was to cancel my debit card and maybe talk to the bank. I didn't want to think badly of her, so I listened. That night, I spent over an hour on hold with the bank, got the card shut down, and assumed I'd just been randomly hacked by some food-hungry scammer. But something didn't sit right. A few hours later, I messaged Grubhub's support team on Twitter and explained what had happened. I asked if they could send me the receipts for the transactions. And credit where it's due, they responded fast. They sent over the first and last receipts saying they had to redact the personal info of the account holder due to privacy laws. Except, their idea of redacting was basically just scribbling over the names with the Snapchat draw tool. I could still see the name clearly underneath. And there it was. Megan's full name, still readable. She had placed all 6 Grubhub orders, using my debit card. Most recently, just 2 hours before I had my card shut off. She was probably still enjoying her stolen dinner while I was on the phone with the bank. And here's the kicker. Remember how we both had unlimited dining plans? The dining hall was literally 500 feet away from our building. She had zero need to order food and absolutely no need to use my money to do it. So I texted her again, trying to keep it civil. "Hey, I have the Grubhub receipts. Are you sure you didn't make those orders?" Her reply, "Fa, you for suspecting me." Not exactly the reaction of someone who's innocent. But, in her words, she was a fairly aggressive person. At that point, I knew she'd done it. I didn't even need more proof, but I wasn't about to let this go. Once I got that text, "Fa, you for suspecting me," I just sat there for a moment, staring at my phone. The anger hadn't even hit me yet. I wasn't sad either. I was just shocked. Shocked that someone could be so bold, so aggressive, and so obviously guilty, yet still try to gaslight me. I should have blocked her right then and there, but I didn't. Part of me still wanted to believe there had to be more to the story. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe she'd come clean and explain everything. I started planning my next move. My idea was to go to the food pickup spot inside our dorm building and try to see if there was any security camera footage from earlier that evening. If I could get a video of her grabbing the bag, it would be undeniable. I had the receipts. If I got the footage too, I'd have a rock-solid case. Not that I wanted to go scorched earth. I just didn't want to be made a fool of. But I didn't even get the chance. Around midnight that same night, just a few hours after I texted her with the receipts, there was a knock on my door. It was Megan. She wasn't angry this time. She was crying. Sobbing, actually. Her whole mood had flipped from rage to shame, and then she confessed. She admitted to placing all the orders using my debit card. No excuses, no blaming anyone else. Just a tearful confession followed by something even more disturbing. She told me she was a serial shoplifter. Apparently, this wasn't the first time she'd stolen something, and not even close to the worst. I was drained, emotionally shot. I told her to leave and that we'd talk in the morning, even though I already knew what I had to do. By the time I woke up the next day, the story had already started spreading through our building. And not the real story, her version. Megan had apparently begun telling everyone that I was the one overreacting, that I was trying to destroy her reputation over a misunderstanding. She said I was smearing her name because I couldn't handle rejection. I didn't even get the chance to get ahead of it. Despite the rumors, I kept it simple. I texted her a breakup message and told her I wanted no more contact. I figured it was all over. 104-29 lost to a horrible mistake. But at least I got out before it got worse. Or so I thought, less than 2 days later, I was sitting at my desk, headphones on, doing homework, when I felt something behind me. I turned, and Megan was standing in my room. I had no idea how long she'd been there, or how she'd even gotten in. She must have slipped in when someone else on the hall opened the door. She stared at me and said, "Give me my stuff." "Where's my stuff?" I blinked. "What stuff?" No, I didn't. I had no clue what she was talking about. She didn't explain. She just started tearing through my room, pulling open drawers, flipping pillows, looking under furniture, like she was searching for buried treasure. And then, just as quickly as she arrived, she stormed out. I locked the door immediately. My heart was pounding. The whole thing had felt surreal, like a horror movie. But it wasn't over yet. Not even a minute later, she was back, banging on the door this time. At first, it was just knocking. Then came the shouting. "I know you're fucking in there! Open the motherfucking door!" She was screaming. At the top of her lungs, in a dorm full of other students who knew exactly who she was, and I knew they could hear everything. It was beyond embarrassing. It was terrifying. Then she started shaking the door handle, rattling it so hard I thought it might snap off. That quickly escalated to her slamming her shoulder into the door over and over again, trying to break it down. My dorm had thick, heavy wooden doors, the kind that could take a beating. But even that wasn't enough. I could hear the wood cracking. The entire door frame started to bend with every impact. I lived right next door to my RA. Naturally, I assumed help would arrive in seconds. But apparently my RA was covering another building that night. No one was coming unless I called. So I did. I texted him with one hand while holding the door with the other, told him I needed backup. While I waited, I did something I hadn't told anyone about at the time. I started filming. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and pointed the camera at the door. The audio captured everything. The shouting, the slamming, the threats, the chaos. I had no idea what I'd do with the footage, but something in my gut told me I might need it someday. Eventually, 3 other RAs from different buildings arrived. They pulled Megan away and took her downstairs. She didn't resist, just shouted one last thing over her shoulder. "All I wanted was the t-shirt and keychain I gave you." "Really?" She tried to bust my door down for a t-shirt and a keychain. I gave them back, of course. At that point, I didn't want to hold on to anything that reminded me of her. I just wanted peace. I wanted it to be over. But it wasn't. Not even close. After Megan was escorted out of my dorm room by the RAs, I hoped, really hoped, that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, I got an email from resident life staff asking to meet. Turns out, they had already started filing paperwork to place a no-contact order between me and Megan. That meant she couldn't speak to me, text me, visit my dorm room, or even be in the same space as me unless absolutely necessary. Honestly, I was relieved. After everything that happened, the theft, the screaming, the attempted door assault, it felt like someone finally took it seriously. Still, I didn't want to escalate things. I wasn't looking to get her kicked out or ruin her life. I just wanted distance, but the staff didn't stop there. They recommended I reach out to campus police, which I reluctantly did. They listened to the story and told me I had a pretty solid case for filing in small claims court to get my stolen money back. But there was one problem. I didn't have a car, and I couldn't afford the Uber rides to the courthouse. The idea of making court dates and dealing with legal red tape just to recover $104.29, it felt like more stress than it was worth. Then the officer said something that changed everything. "You should also contact the Title IX office." That caught me off guard. I always thought Title IX was strictly for cases involving harassment or discrimination, but apparently threatening and violent behavior by one student against another? Yeah, that definitely qualifies. So I reached out. I submitted a full written statement to the Title IX office. Everything from the theft to the midnight door-busting incident. I even attached screenshots of the Grubhub receipts. Their response? Let's just say they were very interested. A representative contacted me directly. She was calm, professional, and surprisingly understanding. I remember telling her that I didn't want to start a witch hunt. I wasn't trying to destroy Megan's life. I just wanted to move on and not be afraid in my own dorm room. But the rep made something clear. This wasn't just about me anymore. She told me that Megan's actions, stealing from another student, screaming threats through a door, physically trying to break it down, and forcing university staff to intervene, those weren't just personal disputes. They were violations of the university's code of conduct. She explained that the school would be pressing 3 misconduct charges against Megan: theft, threatening, or violent behavior inciting university staff intervention. She asked me one final question. Would I be willing to serve as a witness in Megan's disciplinary hearing? I paused. It felt extreme. Part of me still wanted to let it go, But after everything I'd been through, the gaslighting, the rumors she spread, the screaming fit in front of all my neighbors, I agreed. I told her yes. Then she gave me the hearing. Date February 14th, Valentine's Day. I thought she was joking at first. But nope, she was serious. You sure that's not a typo? I asked. Nope, February 14th. Nothing says closure like facing your toxic ex at a disciplinary hearing on Valentine's Day. As the date approached, things started to shift. Even though Megan and I weren't allowed to speak to each other, I started hearing rumors. Friends of mine from the building were still in classes with her. Word was she'd failed all her courses during the fall semester. Someone from my math class even told me that Megan had tried to sleep with him while she and I were still dating. He turned her down multiple times, but the fact that she was making moves on other guys while lying to me, it added a whole new layer to the betrayal. Even worse, she was still spreading lies about me. According to her twisted version of events, I had allowed her to use my debit card. I gave her permission to order food, and then I changed the story and tried to make her look like a thief. She claimed she had calmly asked for her belongings and that I had hidden them from her. In her narrative, I was the unhinged one. I was the manipulative, bitter ex-boyfriend trying to ruin her reputation out of spite. And the worst part? People believed her. Until that moment, I had no idea just how deeply her lies had spread. It wasn't just students. She'd told her parents this version too. That I was unstable. That I was turning people against her. That I had fabricated the entire situation to hurt her after a breakup. I started to worry. What if her parents showed up to the hearing? What if she had a lawyer? What if I had to defend myself in a room where everyone thought I was the villain? And then Valentine's Day arrived. Valentine's Day came, and the air on campus was weirdly festive. Couples exchanging chocolate, dorm windows decorated with paper hearts. Meanwhile, I was walking into a disciplinary hearing that would determine whether or not my ex-girlfriend would be held accountable for threatening me, stealing from me, and trying to break down my door. Talk about mood contrast. I showed up alone to the university's disciplinary board office. The room wasn't what I expected. It wasn't some grand courtroom or even a serious administrative hall. It was more like a converted conference room with cheap chairs and a projector. There were 5 people seated at the front. Graduate students, all part of the board. These were the people who would hear the charges and decide Megan's fate. I sat in the back, waiting for things to begin. And then Megan walked in. She did not come alone. Her parents were with her, one on each side. And they didn't just tag along for moral support. They came ready for battle. They acted like this was some televised trial, like Megan was the innocent victim of some massive conspiracy. To top it off, they had brought a lawyer. Yes, an actual attorney, in a university disciplinary hearing. Apparently, her parents were so convinced of her innocence, they had paid for professional legal representation to argue her case. I couldn't believe it. I showed up with a spiral notebook and a USB drive. She showed up with a defense team. One of the board members leaned over and politely explained, "This isn't a court of law. Legal counsel isn't necessary." But Megan's parents insisted. So in the name of balance, the university offered me what they called pro bono representation. I'm not joking. They assigned me a junior economics major named Jimmy. Jimmy wore a collared shirt, no tie, and looked like he'd just chugged 2 Red Bulls. He shook my hand like he was on a job interview and said, "Don't worry, I read everything. We got this." I wasn't sure if I should feel comforted or terrified, but then I remembered something I hadn't told anyone yet. Not the RA, not resident life, not even the Title IX rep. I had video footage. When Megan was screaming and trying to shoulder slam her way into my dorm room, I had been filming. The video showed everything. The shaking door handle, the slamming, the screaming, the threats, and you could hear exactly what she was yelling through the door. I pulled Jimmy aside and told him. His eyes lit up. "You have what?" I handed him the file on a flash drive. He plugged it into his laptop and watched with his mouth open. "This is gold," he said. "Absolute gold." The hearing began. The board explained the 3 misconduct charges: theft, threatening behavior, and inciting an intervention. Megan's lawyer started with a long opening statement, painting her as the real victim. According to him, I had weaponized a personal breakup into a campus-wide character assassination. He claimed Megan had used my debit card with permission, had only gone to my dorm to retrieve items she rightfully owned, and had never acted aggressively, just passionately. I almost laughed. Then it was our turn. Jimmy stood up and calmly said, "We'd like to submit video evidence to clarify the events in question." They plugged his laptop into the projector and pressed play. And then, silence. On the screen, clear as day, was Megan, outside my dorm room, screaming, slamming, cursing. You could hear everything. "Open the motherfucking door. You know what you did." Every head in the room turned. Some mouths dropped open. Megan's lawyer tried to speak, but Jimmy just raised a finger like, "Not now." The video ended and the room exploded. Megan's parents whipped around to face her. Her mom shouted, "Why didn't you tell us you did this?" Her lawyer was beside himself. This evidence was not submitted during pretrial disclosure. A board member shut him down immediately. "Sir, this is not a courtroom. Please return to your seat." He kept protesting. "Objection! This is a surprise exhibit. My client—" "We don't have objections," another board member said flatly. This isn't a court of law. Meanwhile, Jimmy, my unlikely champion, was doing his best not to laugh out loud. I just sat there watching the chaos unfold, realizing for the first time that I wasn't the one on trial anymore. Megan was. Her entire defense, every lie, every excuse, every performance, crumbled in front of her lawyer, her parents, the board, and me. She didn't say a word after the video played, and honestly, she didn't need to. After the video ended and the room descended into chaos, I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Megan's narrative had shattered. Her lawyer was read in, the face, still trying to argue technicalities. Her parents looked like they just watched their daughter commit a crime on live television. And the disciplinary board, who had stayed quiet during the whole video, suddenly had a lot of questions. It was clear they weren't buying the lawyer's story anymore. Or Megan's. The rest of the hearing moved quickly. Megan stayed silent. Her lawyer did most of the talking, but it was obvious his confidence was gone. He tried to downplay the aggression in the video, said it was emotional distress, and that Megan posed no actual physical threat. He even argued that the same Grubhub receipt had been submitted twice, suggesting I might be inflating the charges. It was a last-ditch effort, and everyone could see through it. The board deliberated for a short time before delivering their decision. Megan was found responsible on all 3 charges: theft, threatening and violent behavior, and inciting an unnecessary intervention. They took both sides' recommendations into account. Jimmy and I had requested full restitution and for her to be removed from the honors dorm. Megan's lawyer argued for only a warning and a note in her record. The board reached a compromise. Megan was ordered to repay the money she stole, most of it. Because 2 of the Grubhub orders had the same total, her lawyer convinced the board that one might have been a duplicate, so she only had to repay 4 of the 6 orders. Fine by me. I wasn't chasing pennies at that point. I just wanted closure. But the biggest consequence? She was forced to move out of our building. That might sound like a light punishment, but for Megan, it was devastating. Everyone in the dorm already knew what happened. People had heard her screaming. They saw the aftermath. And after the hearing, they really knew the truth. She couldn't walk through the hallway without feeling eyes on her. No one spoke to her. No one wanted to be her roommate. She was a ghost in a building where everyone used to know her name. And when she moved out, it didn't get better. Word spread to other dorms. Megan's name became synonymous with drama, lying, and aggression. She had burned every bridge she ever stepped on. By the end of that semester, Megan failed all of her classes again. That made 2 back-to-back semesters with 0 academic progress. Her parents, who had already spent thousands on tuition, housing, a full dining plan, legal fees, and now restitution payments, decided they'd had enough. They pulled her out of school. Just like that, she was gone. No farewell posts, no dramatic exits, just silence. She vanished from the dorms, stopped showing up to class, and unfollowed everyone online. The no-contact order was still in effect, so I never heard from her again. But every now and then, someone would mention her. A passing comment in class. A reference during a dorm discussion. Hey, remember Megan? And someone else would just shake their head. Yeah, they remembered. Eventually, I heard that she returned to campus as a part-time student, but I never saw her again. And I didn't care to. As for me, I moved on. Focused on school. Reconnected with the guy Megan had tried to seduce while we were dating. Turns out he was just as freaked out by her behavior as I was. We became friends. Bonded over surviving the same hurricane in different ways. And Jimmy, the junior econ major turned courtroom MVP, we're now connected on LinkedIn. Every now and then, I'll see a notification about his latest internship or business school plans. I still owe him a drink. But the real win? I learned what a red flag really looks like. I learned that being fairly aggressive isn't charming. It's a warning label. And I learned that sometimes standing up for yourself isn't about revenge. It's about truth, about showing people who someone really is, especially when they've tried so hard to cover it up with lies. Megan tried to take $100 from me. I took her entire illusion of innocence. And when that video played, when the lies collapsed, when her lawyer shouted objection in a room where objections didn't exist, that's when I realized something. Justice doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be true.
The case has been heard. The stories have been told. Now it's your turn to judge. Leave your verdict in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. The Court of Stories is always in session.